Welcome to the Ryco Filters virtual trade booth. My name is Alistair Hampton and I'm the General Manager of Engineering and Innovation. Today I'll be showing you a series of short videos describing one of the most innovative products we've produced in 80 years, the Ryco Catchcan. Before we look into the Ryco Catchcan product, we first have to ask ourselves why there is a need for one in most vehicles.
Now you might be surprised to learn there is another air system on all combustion engines, both diesel and petrol, that enters the engine via the air intake with no filter in place. Let's take a look and follow the intake pipe. It leads to the turbo, through the intercooler, onto the intake manifold before it enters the engine. Now let me remove this hose right here on the diesel. I'm going to do the same on the petrol engine. Both hoses connect into the air intake system, but notice they are well past the protective air filter that I just replaced. If we trace these hoses back, they will connect near the top of the engine via a PCV or positive crankcase ventilation valve. During the combustion process, gases and pressure build up in the crankcase. Without the positive crankcase ventilation system, pressure build-up on the seals like this one behind the crankshaft pulley would eventually leak. Engineers working to deliver improved emission controls created this closed-loop crankcase ventilation system. It results in the crankcase gases being burnt in the combustion process, reducing harmful emissions whilst also controlling the crankcase pressure. The solution fixed one problem, but it did create another. Take a look at what passes through this system. This material was captured in a Ryco Catchcan fitted within the crankcase ventilation system on a Ford Ranger with 40,000 kilometres on the clock. This build-up of material is from 10,000 kilometres of driving. Without the Catchcan, everything you saw pouring out would have entered the air intake system with no filtration. Pretty alarming, isn't it? Now you might ask, why wasn't a Catchcan fitted from the factory? Extra cost is likely an answer. But also, the issues of not having a Catchcan take time before they present themselves. Let's take a bore scope and inspect this GDI petrol engine with around 60k on the clock. I'm sending the scope down through the intake manifold and in behind the intake valves. Over the last 60,000 kilometres, the gunk that we saw from the crankcase ventilation system has helped to line the walls of the intake. Mixing with fuel, air, crankcase and exhaust gas vapours, it has developed into carbon. It's now stuck to the back of these intake valves and more than likely on the pistons and piston rings. With this build-up, the airflow is now being disrupted entering the combustion chamber. The engine has likely developed a miss, which impacts fuel economy, and slowly the engine's performance is going backwards. All the while, this carbon is getting harder and harder. And eventually, to remove the build-up, this engine will need to be pulled down. Now, just like replacing the air filter, there is a solution to this issue, a Ryco Catchcan. It's like a piece of OEM equipment that should have been installed when you first purchased the vehicle. In fact, the sooner you install a Ryco Catchcan to your vehicle, the better. Ryco provide both universal kits and specially engineered kits with mounting brackets and hoses to suit popular makes and models. With a Ryco Catchcan in place, the gases now enter the Catchcan first, which will trap and clean the vapour mix, passing it through a filter comprising of a high efficiency coalescing media, removing a key culprit to the build-up of carbon. Any hydrocarbon liquid, oil vapour and water condensation gathers on the media surface. When these particles form large enough droplets, they fall to the oil collection sump at the base of the unit. The filtered crankcase air is now drawn into the cylinders and burnt as intended. With a Ryco Catchcan installed, each time you service the vehicle, inspect and drain the filter. Different engines may require more frequent drain cycles based on their individual power and operating conditions. It's not just 4x4s with diesel engines that will benefit from a Ryco Catchcan. Petrol engines suffer from the same issue, especially those with GDI or direct injection fuel systems. Ryco continued to develop products with local engineers, and the current RCC351 Catchcan or RCC351K, including universal fitting kit, has been designed for both petrol and diesel engines. The unit is also suitable for some unique applications, including the VW Amarok I'm fitting today. Check with your local Ryco stockists for a kit to suit your car and protect your investment.
As you can see, the Ryco Catchcan is much more than an accessory. It's vital for the engine to maintain its performance and efficiency and assist longevity. As our knowledge and experience of crankcase filtration has grown, and with valuable customer feedback, we saw a need in the 4x4 market for fitment kits for popular four-wheel drives. Customers want to fit catch cans as well as diesel fuel water separator pre-filters. But fitting these products in already full engine bays is difficult. Here's a brief description of the tools we employed to design and develop Ryco vehicle-specific kits, or RVSK, in our very own Melbourne laboratory.
3D scanning allows us to map an engine bay very, very accurately, and we can then also pinpoint things like the studs and the weld nuts, the things that we need to bolt to. 3D scanning process means that we can literally take an engine bay into CAD and we can build our parts and put our parts physically into CAD. We can then start 3D printing prototypes, and when we 3D print prototypes, that's when we go back to the vehicle, and now we're actually seeing, does our design work? Can you physically get it into the vehicle? We then also design things like the accessory parts, like moulded hoses for the PCV. The 3D technology allows us to measure to a very high degree of accuracy things like engine bays, and then design parts that will fit properly straight away and get us to production months faster than using conventional measurement techniques.
We developed the RVSKs so that multiple filters could be fitted with ease and will fit perfectly into a specific engine bay without having to sacrifice a second battery or cutting or drilling into the bodywork. Now we'll see an example of the fitment of an RVSK to an MQ Triton.
The Ryco RVSK112 kit for the Mitsubishi Triton comes supplied with specifically moulded hoses, fuel lines, hose clamps and brackets engineered to fit the Z980K fuel water separator and the RCC351 series catch can, both of which are sold separately. It's recommended that the kit is fitted by a qualified mechanic following the procedures in this instructional video. The first step is fitting the mounting bracket for the fuel water separator. We begin with unclipping all the OEM fuel filter electrical Deutsch connectors from the factory fuel filter bracket. Disconnect both the male and female connectors and remove the OEM fuel filter housing from the fuel filter bracket by lifting it up out of its slot and then place it into the left-hand side of the bracket. Unscrew the two M8 bolts and ensure you hold on to them, as you'll be using these to fit the Ryco bracket later. Next, unscrew these M8 bolts and keep them aside, as they'll also be reused. Now, it's time to remove the OEM fuel supply hose and hose clamps. Have a rag ready, as some fuel will spill from the hose and pipe. To begin fitting the bracket, half screw in two of the OEM M8 bolts saved from the previous steps into the base mounting point. Slide in the Ryco bracket like so, and screw in the remaining bolts saved from the previous steps into the Firewall mounting point. Then install the Ryco supplied M6 flange nut onto the Firewall stud as shown and fully tighten all the bolts. Now, clip the first female connector onto the slot and connect the male and female connector as shown, then fasten with the supplied cable tie. Now, clip the second female connector to the slot on the Ryco bracket as shown. Next, we'll prepare the Z980K fuel water separator for fitment. You'll need the two blanking plugs supplied with the fuel water separator kit and the two quick connectors supplied with the RVSK kit. Apply the supplied sealant to the thread of the blanking plugs and to the quick connectors. Fit them and ensure they're tight. We recommend placing the head into a bench vise to complete this part of the installation and allow at least 20 minutes for the Loctite to cure. Now, it's time to install the fuel water assembly onto the RVSK bracket, using the 2 black M10 bolts and washers supplied. Make sure both bolts are done up tight. We'll now prepare the 2 Ryco fuel hoses. Install the supplied hose clamps and elbow connectors onto each end of the fuel hose as shown, but do not tighten the hose clamps yet. Starting with the longer Ryco fuel hose, install the open end of the hose onto the vehicle's fuel tank supply pipe and tighten with the supplied hose clamp. Now, route the hose around the front of the OE fuel filter housing and along the other side of the fuel filter assembly like this. Connect the Ryco elbow connector to the Z980K inlet quick connector and listen for a click noise. With the shorter Ryco fuel hose, install the open end of the hose onto the inlet port of the fuel filter housing and tighten with the supplied hose clamp. Route the hose into the position shown and press the quick connector into position. Again, listen for the click noise. Now, locate the priming button on top of the factory fuel filter and prime the fuel system by pumping the button repeatedly. Continue pumping until it's hard to press. The priming process could take approximately 5 to 10 minutes. Once you can no longer depress the priming button, turn on the engine and inspect the hose, filter and fittings for any fuel leaks. We can proceed to the catch can installation. Remove the plastic engine cover and then remove the OEM PCV hose as shown. Next, remove the OEM bolt from behind the ABS module. Hold on to this bolt as you will screw it back into this thread in a later step. Now, locate and remove the rear airbox mounting bolt and washer. When fitting the catch can, you'll be required to maneuver the bracket around engine components like this. Ryco recommend first engaging the bracket bottom leg onto the engine stud under the brake pipes. Then proceed to line up the slot located on the driver's side wheel arch. Now, push the bracket into position on the thread behind the airbox and line up the thread on the firewall and then finally behind the ABS module. Use the supplied M6 bolt, spring washer and washer and screw down into the airbox mount. Locate the bracket foot behind the brake lines and use the M6 flange nut to secure the bracket and finally refit the OEM bolt behind the ABS module. Now you can slot the catch can onto the catch can bracket as shown and rotate to ensure clearance of the engine airbox. We can begin hose installation starting with the shorter molded PVC hose. Install the small end onto the engine PCV port and tighten with the supplied hose clamp. You can now install the other end of the hose onto the lower inlet port of the catch can and fit the hose clamp. Install the larger end of the longer PCV hose onto the upper outlet port of the catch can and fit the hose clamp. Install the other end of the molded PCV hose onto the air intake PCV port and fit the final hose clamp. Make sure all the Ryco supplied molded hoses aren't squashed and are free of any kinks. To install the drain hose, remove the drain plug from the bottom of the catch can, take out the rubber seal from the plug and refit it. Insert the drain hose and secure it with the supplied clamp. Insert the hose drain tap to the other end and use the zip ties to secure the hose. To drain, pull back the red section until all oil has drained out.
Now that you are a bit more familiar with an RVSK and catch can, the last video I'm about to show you will reinforce the importance of the product. The footage you are seeing is from a fairly new Ford Ranger, which had the catch can installed at 30,000 kilometres. You can see only after 10,000 kilometres, a large amount of contaminants have already been captured, as well as a significant amount of water and even solid soot particles. By installing a Ryco RVSK and catch can, you can be assured of the critical role it will play keeping your vehicle on the road, keeping performance up, and keeping maintenance costs down. Thank you for joining us and learning about the Ryco Catchcan development story. We are now on standby for any questions you may have.